The summer before I started school, my mom was hospitalized for an extraordinarily high-risk pregnancy. My dad was pulling double shifts just to keep us afloat, which meant no one had time to take care of me. So they shipped me away to my aunt's house, 1,000 miles away. I was excited at first. I was obsessed with the idea of adventure, a real adventure with magical creatures and quests. Maybe this trip would be the catalyst to just such an adventure. By the time we reached my aunt's enormous and breathtaking, beautiful mountain property, I fully believed I was about to embark on my very own fairy tale. The fairy tale dissipated when my father drove away the next morning. I watched his car disappear, trying not to cry and failing miserably. When you are 6 years old, a day feels like a week. A day with strangers feels twice as long, especially when the strangers aren't kind. Aunt Charlotte didn't really care for my mother, and by extension, didn't really care for me. Nor did her children. Charles and Alan loved nothing more than scaring me to death with stories of serial killers and child drowning ghosts. They also made it very clear that I ranked far below them in the family hierarchy. So I spent my days roaming the property. Rocky peaks stood sentry in every direction, rising from the landscape like curious giants. Stands of aspens rattled in the wind, snowy bark shining, and the wildflowers, fragrant, multicolored carpets of blossoms, spreading across meadows and trailing under the trees where they glowed like dim, warm lights. The outdoors soothed my isolation as effectively as a salve. In late June, the zenith of summer, just before the walloping heat of July burns everything to a dry tangle, I found a neighbor's house, small and run down with a garbage-strewn lawn. Through an open window I saw a woman. She didn't look right. Half-lidded eyes stared blankly at the ceiling and her mouth hung open. I turned away and continued my hike. There's something sharp in the mountain air, a clean wildness that simultaneously heightens your senses and intoxicates you. I drifted through the forest in a delighted haze until a voice broke my reverie. A child's voice, happily singing. I perked up. Fairies and nymphs sang in forest. Maybe I'd found my very own magical creature. Maybe this was the start of my adventure. I ran through the trees, aspens rattled in my wake, breaking apart suddenly to reveal a murky pond. And in the pond, a little girl with long black hair. I froze. So did she. Sun shafted through the trees, drenching her in golden light. "Hi," I said nervously. "My name's Rachel." I held up my fingers. "I'm 6. The girl's eyes shone, large and dark, yet somehow golden, like sunlight glancing off tar. "I'm Lorelei, and I'm a mermaid." I stepped closer, feet crunching on twigs and leaves. "I've never met a mermaid." "I'm the last one, my mother told me." She swanned across the pond, stopping just short of the edge. "Is your mom a mermaid?" "No, just human. She had 5 kids, all mermaids. Every last one died except me." Shocked tears burned my eyes. "All of them?" "All of them," she intoned. "It's not her fault. She didn't know her kids were mermaids, but she finally figured out in time to save me." "Do you live in the water?" "Yes. For 10 hours a day. I come in at night since I'm scared of the dark. That's because I'm not all the way a mermaid yet." She ducked underwater and erupted with a glittering splash. "When I'm all the way mermaid, nothing will scare me." "What do you mean, not all the way mermaid?" I crept closer. The earth was dangerously soft under my feet, like it might crumble into the water. Lorelei was clearly enjoying herself. "Mermaids look like humans, unless they spend lots of time in the water. Water washes away the human part so the mermaid part can come out. I have to be in the water at least 10 hours. She held up her own small, wrinkly fingers. "Every day, or I'll get sick and die." "When will you become full mermaid?" "Soon." She swam to the other end, once more stopping several inches short of the shore.
Mom says changing hurts, and I hurt everywhere.
I'm sorry. Lorelei smiled radiantly.
Don't be. When I'm a mermaid, I'll find a special tunnel at the bottom of the pond. It leads to the ocean, but only mermaids can see it. I can't wait. Have you seen the ocean? Yes,
I said.
My dad takes me to Cabrillo Beach. Where's that? California.
Her eyes went wide and she clapped her hands. I noticed they were covered in swollen red bumps like bug bites.
You're from California?
We spent the rest of the afternoon discussing the California coast.
I'll come see you when I'm a mermaid,
Lorelei promised.
You can't be scared though. Full mermaids aren't pretty, but we're really nice if you give us a chance. I'll give you lots of chances. You're the nicest person I ever met. Nicest mermaid,
she corrected and laughed. I visited Lorelei every morning and left just before sunset. That's when her mom came to fetch her. I had to leave before then because she'd be furious that I discovered Lorelei's secret. Every day I brought chips, sandwiches, and drawings of mermaids. We sang nursery rhymes and lullabies, the Blues Clues theme, and original compositions. Mostly we talked. We discussed everything. California, the ocean, fairy tales, the forest, her dead siblings, and my forthcoming brother.
You need to check if he's a mermaid, she said seriously. If he is, you have to put him in the water so he doesn't die. How can you tell? My mom says you have to listen to your lizard brain,
Lorelei answered.
It knows.
That night, I dreamed of drowned babies and long, sinus lizards crawling out of my eyes to whisper strange secrets in my ear. Lorelei was a welcome break from everything else, from my cousins, who constantly tormented me and scared me to death with ghost stories, from my aunt who ignored me, and from my own fears which ate me alive unless I was with Lorelei. As June bled into July and July hobbled into a breathless and suffocating August, I realized Lorelei was the best friend I ever had. I told her so one afternoon as I lay belly down on a damp shore. She gave me a tired smile. I figured she must have been close to becoming full mermaid because she looked awful. Bone thin, with dark hollows under her eyes and broken teeth.
You're the only friend I ever had. How? You're so nice.
She swam over, stopping several inches short of the edge as always. She was so close I could smell her breath, which was ghastly.
People are scared of mermaids. That's why Mom hides me. But being friends with a mermaid is super lucky.
She took my hand. Her skin was cold and somehow thin, like a fish belly, white and nearly translucent, except for the angry red welts and mosquito bites.
I'll make you the luckiest person in the world. I promise.
The prospect of mermaid luck made me so giddy I couldn't contain myself. When I got home that night, I regaled everyone with tales of my mermaid friend, Lorelei. Charlotte exchanged a worried glance with her husband, then Charles snorted with laughter. A mermaid? Stupid.
Charles!
What? He guaffled again. She's talking about mermaids.
Her imaginary friend is so stupid it lives in stagnant water, Alan added. No, I stood up angrily. Her name is Lorelei and she's real. I'll show you right now. But nobody wanted to tromp across several woodland acres in the growing dark because nobody believed in mermaids. Nobody except me. Over the following days, Lorelei's condition deteriorated severely. Mosquito bites peppered her water-wrinkled skin, strange puffy welts snaked over her body, her long black hair became a haven for water bugs and detritus. I feel things in my skin, she extended her rashy, welt-covered arm. I think I have bugs inside me, she grimaced. When I'm a mermaid, I'll be poisonous to bugs, they'll never bite me again. Looking at her, the skeletal form, the stark, almost inhuman sharpness of her face, made me want to cry. I wish I could help you. You do, she assured me. You'll be here when I turn into a mermaid, and you'll show me how to get to California. She took my hands. Hers were terribly weak and cold. You should go. It's almost sunset. Thick golden light drowned the world in an ethereal haze, but sure enough, shadows were growing.
devouring that light before my eyes.
Okay, see you tomorrow, Lorelei. See you tomorrow, Rachel.
That glided sunlight lay over her like a blanket. It erased the sickness and ugliness, leaving a small, dark-haired angel. A real mermaid. As I left, she broke into a song. The melody echoed through the forest for so long it could have been magic. That night, Charles scared me with his favorite ghost story. Alan insisted he'd seen the ghost in question. A rail thin woman draped in white, drifting through the trees outside my window. They brought me to tears, then told me they were going ghost hunting, and I had to come along. They forced me into the forest. Heavy shadows blanketed the trees, black and blue and deep ominous purple, thick as curtains. Finally, we stopped in a clearing. Aspens ringed the little meadow, glimmering weirdly like skinly ghosts full of unblinking black eyes. They poured a ring of salt in an uneven circle and chanted. Their voices filled the night, underscored by the light wind and the eerie rattle of the leaves. "Weeping Lady of the Woods," Charles finally bellowed, "we summon you now!" Silence. And then a sound, high, miserable and broken. Sobbing. My cousins froze. The weeping continued, a haunting, atonal melody bleeding through the night. Charles ran, and Alan followed. I watched him go, frozen to the spot until the sobbing broke my paralysis. I tore after them, expecting long, white hands to reach out of the darkness and pull me away. We ran for what felt like hours when the house finally came into sight. I had a second of relief before I tripped and skidded down the slope. A tree trunk hurtled toward me like a rocket. Then everything went dark. I woke up in the hospital. Minor skull fracture and a concussion, but otherwise okay. I went home 3 days later. 3 days after that, I crept out of the house to see Lorelei. On my way to the pond, I entered an aspen ring clearing. My feet crunched weirdly. I looked down and saw a dirty, uneven ring of salt. This was where my cousins held their stupid seance. Just a few minutes later, I saw the pond glimmering through the trees. Relief and excitement coursed through me.
Lorelei!
Nothing. The water shone, a field of gold interrupted by mosquitoes and water bugs.
Lorelei!
I circled the pond, dread building with every step. I called and eventually screamed, but there was no point. Lorelei was gone. She turned into a mermaid, and I'd missed it. She'd never get to California now. I sat down and wept for hours. Toward sunset, a shrill wail shocked me out of my daze. Fear coiled in my guts as it sounded again. Not a wail. A siren. I followed the sound to that broken down little house. Flashing lights drenched the trees in red and blue. The window, still wide open, blazed with light. Paramedics loaded an inert body onto a stretcher and carried it outside to the ambulance. A police radio crackled and a cop looked up. Had it not been for the trees, she would have seen me. Maybe they were looking for me. I'd run away even though I had a skull fracture and was supposed to stay in bed. Maybe they'd arrest me. I tiptoed into the forest and went home. By the time I reached my aunt's house, Darhk had long since fallen. I felt sick and dizzy, and my head throbbed with every step. Everyone was waiting for me. Cousins, aunt, and uncle. And to my horror, a policeman. My aunt stormed over. I thought she was going to hit me. Instead, she gathered me into a hug and held me tight. This is what they told me. The neighbor was a mentally ill drug addict who overdosed several days before. A welfare check from her landlord led to the discovery of her body. She had 5 children. 3 were in foster care. 1 died of SIDS. The last, a girl named Lorelei, was officially missing. A filthy, bedbug-infested bedroom indicated that a child lived in that house. It was covered in Mermaid memorabilia, including several pictures I'd drawn for her. But they couldn't find her. I told them about the pond. Their horrified expressions were at odds with the hysterical relief I felt.
It's because she's a mermaid. She turned into a mermaid and swam to California.
They searched the pond that night. At the bottom was an algae-slick block of granite. Chained to the block was the corpse of an emaciated little girl with long black hair. It's been 20 years. I can't shake the memory of the seance, of the shrill crying echoing in the darkness. I was stupid enough to believe it was a ghost, but it was just a little girl who was scared of the dark.